Chapter 378. The Abyss 2. Bonus image. Not even a faint whisper of Tempest's voice could be heard from the moment the fall began. Eugene raised his head to look upward, where the gradually receding door revealed itself. It wasn't Eugene who had opened it. Rather, the door had opened of its own accord before inviting Eugene in. Eugene lowered his gaze without becoming flustered. Despite straining his eyes, he could only see an abyss of immeasurable depth before him. He could not see what lay below at the bottom of the chasm. And it wasn't just below. The door that had been visible when he had raised his head had vanished as well, and darkness enveloped the surroundings as he scanned side to side. Then the scenery morphed in an instant. Ruins were all he could see. Lifting his head to peer farther yielded no better results. Everywhere he looked, destruction prevailed. The sky was gray as if laden with dense clouds, but it was merely an illusion. The expanse overhead, blanketing this world, bore a resemblance to the sky, yet was not the sky. Consequently, neither the sun nor stars existed beyond it. Could have been that way perhaps since the beginning of this world. Eugene felt a turmoil bubbling deep within his chest as he descended to the ground. Slowly he surveyed the surroundings. The remnants of collapsed buildings around him appeared both familiar and foreign. Eugene nudged a fallen wall gently. With a mere touch, the wall crumbled violently, the sound echoing resoundingly in this desolate world. He listened intently, expecting a response, yet no movements or reactions greeted the spreading noise. Figures, Eugene murmured with a bitter smile. What had he been expecting? That someone might still remain in this barren, silent world? That was an utterly absurd, not to mention cruel thought. His heart continued to rage and his mind was in turmoil. It wasn't a result of the recoil from ignition. It wasn't an issue with his body. Instead, his soul was being shaken to its very core. Despite the lack of discernible paths in the ruins, Eugene instinctively knew where the roads lay and where he should head. But his steps faltered. His very will was shaking. As he had told Tempest, he feared what revelations this place might offer. Perhaps it would be better not to see, to remain capable without the burden of understanding? No, I can't, Eugene told himself resolutely. He grasped his wavering heart and forced his reluctant feet forward. Doubting his ability to handle it? Handle what? The truth, he admitted to himself. 7. Eugene gritted his teeth. All that appeared before him were ruins shattered beyond recognition. Yet if he ventured a bit further he would come across something assuring, something that would evoke his self-awareness. Eugene knew of a time when this ruin was not a ruin, a time when this now lifeless world brimmed with vitality. A time long past when this city had been under the rule of the Demon King. The Demon King of Fury had 4 children. Their names somewhat escaped him. However, these names differed from those Hamel remembered. However, they weren't different beings from those that the Demon King of Fury had adopted and nurtured 300 years ago. 6. Camash, Oberon, Sane and Iris. They had all been blood-born children of Fury many ages ago. All 4 had met their end in this city. Flames of war had fiercely engulfed the town, and though the Demon King of Fury resisted vehemently, he ultimately succumbed to defeat. At the moment the city was seized, he chose flight, but his offspring threw themselves into the chaos, hoping to preserve their father's life. The war ceased with the Demon King's retreat. The humans enslaved by the demon folk were liberated, their tears flowing as they venerated the figure who had brought an end to the war. And what stood before Eugene was? It was a symbol of a radiant era, an embodiment of salvation once revered by the people of the city. Eugene gazed forward while standing tall. It had once shimmered brilliantly, always immaculate and untouched even by a speck of dust. Every day as the bell tolled at noon, the square filled with devotees offering prayers, and countless pilgrims journeyed from afar to witness it. People yearned to become beacons illuminating the era and would fervently pledge their oaths before it. Eugene silently looked ahead as he remembered the past. The figure before Eugene was now an ancient statue. To be completely honest, it was far from a beautiful sight. Couldn't be helped, however. The statue had been carved in the tumultuous moments following the city's liberation by artisans who had been enslaved by the Demon King and the demon folk. Due to their prolonged enslavement, a deep-seated hatred and fury had been ingrained within the artisans. Such emotions naturally found expression through their chisel and hammer and saturated the statue. It bore an ugliness reflecting the wrath and bitterness they held towards the Demon King and the demons, an ugliness that could not be beautified. When the statue was first completed, despite not having flesh or blood mingled into its materials, a stench of blood pervaded the air around it. But that was a story from too long ago. Now the statue had lost its former glory along with the fading of the brilliant era. It was now laden with dust and marred by cracks and chips. It no longer shone with its radiant aura. Eugene surveyed the mound made of demon corpses. The sculpted faces once depicted with pain and horror were largely eroded by time, muddled and broken. Eugene slowly raised his gaze and fixed his eyes on something above the mound. There sat a man, a blunt great sword slung over his shoulder. It was Agaroth, the god of war. 2. It was the man who had been given such a title. Eugene remembered the time when the statue was first created. The artisans had channeled rage, hatred, and murderous intent while carving the demon corpses, but infused joy, faith, and hope when shaping Agaroth. It couldn't be helped, for Agaroth was indeed the savior of this city. Had he not ushered in the war, the city would have remained under the tyrannical rule of the Demon King of Fury indefinitely. He had cherished this statue, though he never showed it openly. He found it somewhat embarrassing to overtly admire a grand depiction of oneself. When the statue was first unveiled, Agaroth had maintained a stern facade amidst the liberated, joyous citizens. He had been unable to laugh openly. Eugene felt a surge of nausea. It came as a pulsating ache in his head. Gasping for air, he clutched at his chest. He was seemingly alone in this place, yet his ears were inundated with a cacophony of sounds echoing in his mind. The clash of metal, sounds of slicing, piercing and breaking, cries of anguish, booming war cries, the clinking of liquor glasses and laughter. Everything he heard was the sound of war. He gritted his teeth tightly and forced himself to lift his head once more. Before him stood the shattered statue, its meticulously carved face now hardly recognizable. Trying to visualize Agaroth's face from the fragmented figure seemed an impossible task. Yet Eugene remembered vividly how pristine it used to be. He didn't even need to imagine Agaroth's face. Seated upon a mound of corpses was a man he had glimpsed even in the dark room, a sight granted through Agaroth's ring. He had stolen a glimpse into Agaroth's memories. But had he really stolen a glimpse? Eugene raised his hands and traced the contours of his own face. It was different. Despite both of them having two eyes, a nose and a mouth, the faces of Agaroth and Eugene Lionheart bore no resemblance. Nor did it resemble that of Hamildina's. Yet the three were the same, distinct in flesh but identical in spirit. "It's me," Eugene murmured. 2. He let his hands fall. "I was Agaroth." Eugene's voice was quiet as he voiced a long-forgotten truth. 6. The Church of Light was the predominant religion of this era. According to their holy text, the God of Light was the first being to be deemed a god in this world. In a distant past, before civilization dawned on the continent, before the existence of the Demon Kings, a time so ancient that the boundaries between demons, monsters, and beasts were indistinguishable, that all of them were simply referred to as monsters. During that period, the sun brightened the sky, yet when night fell, humans could only cower silently in the darkness, for the fire of that age, although hot, could not emit light. Humans had been profoundly frail compared to the monsters. Every monster was birthed from darkness, and they were the masters of the night. The frail humans united to stand against them, but to no avail. As more humans were consumed and fear of the monsters grew, the days shortened while the nights lengthened. This resulted in an increase in the number of monsters and a decline in the human population. Just as hope seemed completely lost, a divine light descended from the heavens. A god appeared. He dispelled the darkness and gifted brightness to the mere warm flame, rewriting history into the age now known to all. This was the history of the current era. This was the period after the era of myths when Agaroth lived. Eugene couldn't fathom how this era blossomed. The memories surfacing pertained to a much more ancient time, a time, how should he word it, that somewhat resembled the situation 300 years ago. The demons and demon kings resided on the other end of the continent. They had lived among themselves, with a clear demarcation existing between the world of humans and demons. Then at one point the demon kings and the demons crossed the boundary. They invaded, conquered, and ruled over the human world. It was at such a time that Agaroth was born, a time bubbling with resistance against the invasion and dominance of the demon kings. A young Agaroth took up a sword and stepped bravely onto the battlefield. He had spent the majority of his life on the battlefield. He had experienced defeats, yet victories were significantly more numerous. Every enemy faced in battle belonged to the demon race. Agaroth's blade had sought out many demon kings, each known by different names, and many met their end at his hand. "I'm not sure if you recall," a voice approached, resonating with an impending doom. "You failed to kill the Demon King of Fury. You would have won had you fought him, but the Demon King of Fury fled before a battle could take place." The sound of chains dragging echoed ominously in the background. "After losing everything, the Demon King of Fury came to me and begged. He abandoned his pride and bowed in submission. He begged for only a single desire to be fulfilled. Do you know what that was?" "Revenge," Eugene responded without turning around. The Demon King of Incarceration raised his gaze, removing his attention from Eugene's back and fixating his eyes on the ancient, weathered statue. Point 2. The Demon King of Incarceration crafted a chair from chains. With a stoic expression, he seated himself. "But he failed to achieve even that," he said in a neutral tone. Eugene clenched his fists tightly. Agaroth had once embarked on a daunting venture to conquer the Devildom completely. He had never doubted the feasibility of such an endeavor. As the Demon King of Incarceration said, Agaroth had been revered as the god of war in that era. He had been born a human but had attained godhood through divine adoration and widespread reverence. With followers who sang hymns of holy wars, donned in armor and wielding swords, Agaroth sought to eradicate all the demon kings and their kind from the world, aspiring for an absolute dominion over the Devildom. But as it always is, the end arrived abruptly. It came before the Demon King of Fury could seek you out, before you, revered as the god of war, could march against me with a drawn sword. The end of everything came unexpectedly. The Demon King of Incarceration continued his narration. Eugene remembered well. True monsters had emerged from the other end of the world. The monsters were devoid of reason. They did not seek to conquer and instill fear into humans but to mindlessly slaughter. The monsters were driven not by a sense of purpose but by a primal urge for violence, a horrifying nature that stood as both their rationale and innate disposition. As these monsters poured forth, countless human lives were extinguished. Agaroth, who was preparing for the next battle, having defeated the Demon King of Fury, found himself not heading towards the Demon Lord of Incarceration as intended but instead thrust into a war against these incomprehensible monsters. He achieved numerous victories. The monsters were even easier to conquer compared to the Demon Kings. But when the act of killing and attaining victory became a natural sequence, things changed. Memories from the dark room began to overlay with his memories. Eugene recalled the sight of an unimaginably large heap of corpses, hundreds, no thousands, scattered across the battlefield like common trash. He remembered. A turmoil of intermingled colors without clear form plagued his vision, a sight too complex to be comprehended or perhaps something he refused to understand. Just as it had happened 300 years ago, the emergence of the Demon King of Destruction plunged everything into despair. The Demon King of Destruction had been in existence. One should never engage in battle. A demon king unlike any other, a form built from pure despair and fear. Yet the crucial difference from 300 years ago was that Agaroth had refused to flee. Although a whirlpool of desperation and terror had threatened to take control, Agaroth had lunged into destruction. Every soldier who followed Agaroth did so with relentless trust, marching forward even as fear evoked screams of horror from within them. "Your war was long, yet it ultimately ended in defeat," explained the Demon King of Incarceration. The Demon King of Incarceration continued, "You knelt before the inevitable destruction, an adversary you could never defy. The beasts of destruction slaughtered not only your followers but every individual of that era." Eugene turned his head to see the Demon King of Incarceration. Seated on a throne forged from chains, the Demon King of Incarceration tilted his head, remarking with an idle gesture, "The Demon King is accustomed to it." Eugene just silently listened to the tale of his past life. Even the Demon King of Fury had to come to terms with it eventually. Destruction always comes suddenly, as an inescapable law. Even the Demon Kings can do little at that moment, continued the Demon King of Incarceration. "Is that why you remained here?" asked Eugene. "It was an agreement with the Demon King of Fury. responded the Demon King of Incarceration. You had no reason to grant him that, retorted Eugene. A reason? A rare smile appeared on the Demon King of Incarceration's face. It's not your place to judge, the Demon King of Fury asked. I presented my terms and thus a deal was struck and a promise formed. That is all there is to it. The Demon King of Fury had a vested interest in this city. It was here that he had faced defeat, fled, and lost his children. I incarcerated the status and the dark power of the Demon King of Fury in this city so that someday, as he wished, someone worthy, a child of his line, could inherit them when they reached these waters, explained the Demon King of Incarceration. What about the Demon King of Fury from 300 years ago? Asked Eugene. The Demon King of Fury that met her end at your hands today asked me the same question, responded the Demon King of Incarceration. The Demon King of Incarceration had refused to respond to the inquiry. However, there was no reason not to give an answer anymore. It was a contract. Iris had yearned for an answer to that question. Had the Demon King of Incarceration given an answer, Iris would not have stayed in these waters. She had lingered here to hear the truth from him. The Demon King of Fury made a pact with me. He wished that when he was reborn he would retain all the memories from his previous life. At this response, Eugene's lips twitched. It wasn't a difficult request. It was far simpler than sealing away the Demon King's power and status with the city, especially for me. In the end, he reincarnated as a demon just as he wished while retaining his past life's memories. He gathered power to rediscover the self from his recollections and became a Demon King once more, explained the Demon King of Incarceration. Eugene listened without a word as he processed the information. The payment was received in the form of a soul, said the Demon King of Incarceration with a smile. As is often the case, the soul is the entity itself. To trade it, one needs a firm agreement and submission. It's impossible for a Demon King to take possession of the soul of another Demon King. Typically, entities such as Demon Kings choose total annihilation over submission. Was it you? Eugene managed to open his mouth with difficulty. Was it not Vermouth who reincarnated me but you? Doubting Vermouth? The Demon King of Incarceration asked while retaining his smile. Or, does it discomfort you to think that your soul and memories were tampered with by a Demon King like me? Chapter 379, The Abyss, 3. Doubting Vermouth? Naturally there was doubt. It would be stranger not to harbor any doubts. Vermouth Lionheart. That guy had been suspicious even 300 years ago. It wasn't strange for a person to have a secret or two they wished to hide from everyone, but Vermouth had far more than a couple of secrets tucked away. Even thinking about it now, everything about Vermouth was shrouded in mystery and aroused suspicion. Eugene even harbored misgivings about whether Vermouth had even been a human. He even wondered whether Vermouth Lionheart had been his real name. But despite the swirling doubts and thinking of Vermouth as a bastard, Hamel/Eugene believed in Vermouth. He understood very well that trust and doubt could not go hand in hand. Yet he believed in Vermouth even if the bastard might not be human and even if Vermouth had not been his actual name. It was simple. Eugene had faith in Vermouth. It wasn't just Eugene either. Even Sienna, who had been stabbed through the heart by Vermouth, trusted him. Molin, who had been hunting monsters for over 100 years due to a single request from the man, also believed in Vermouth. Anise, who had personally overseen Vermouth's funeral with tears in her eyes, believed in Vermouth too. Like daggers, the Demon King's question struck hard and deep into Eugene's wounded spirit. It felt suffocating. Eugene glared at the Demon King of Incarceration without offering an immediate response. Setting aside the trust in Vermouth, that question hit too close to home. It was so on point that it felt offensive. By now, it was apparent that Vermouth wasn't the only one to have been involved in his reincarnation. Perhaps Vermouth had sought the help of the Demon King of Incarceration to carry out this unheard-of and almost nigh impossible feat. "I see what you're thinking," said the Demon King of Incarceration as if he could read Eugene's thoughts. He appeared entertained. Unlike during his encounter with Iris, he felt emotions and wasn't bothered to hide them. "You trust yet doubt Vermouth. You trust the Vermouth Lionheart from 300 years ago, the one who wandered the Devildom with you and your comrades. However, you don't know the Vermouth who existed after your death." Eugene had no response to this astute observation. "And it's not just you. Sienna Meridian, Molin Roar, and Anise Slywood, none of them know who Vermouth became after they left the Devildom. After your death, everyone grew distant from Vermouth, continued the Demon King of Incarceration as if narrating a tale. That was irrefutably true. Vermouth and the Demon King of Incarceration struck a deal, bringing the war to an end. Molen retreated to the northern tundra and became busy establishing a kingdom. Sienna and Anise, disappointed in Vermouth, had isolated themselves in the Magic Tower and the Cathedral respectively. The same applies to Vermouth. Eugene spat out those words while maintaining a piercing glare on the Demon King. Vermouth had similarly failed to address the growing rifts and drifting emotions. Looking back now, it even felt as though this might have all been Vermouth's intention. He had failed to give a proper explanation, failed to even offer a simple defense, and had turned away from his comrades without a word. Do you perhaps wonder if the Vermouth you don't know went mad and that I, the Demon King, exploited him? The Demon King teased with a knowing look. When Sienna was attacked, the person attacking her was Vermouth, yet not Vermouth. But he had not remained hostile toward the end. After piercing a hole through Sienna's chest, the look of regret and horror in Vermouth's eyes, even if for a brief moment, had been unmistakable. Vermouth was held captive by the Demon King of Incarceration, potentially even mind-controlled. Such a possibility had always lingered in their minds. Yet now they had to consider other potential truths as well. The Moonlight Sword. It wasn't just a vague probability. If Vermouth had lost his mind, it would undoubtedly be because of the Moonlight Sword. Eugene was convinced of this now. While fighting with Iris, Eugene had experienced it firsthand. The rampaging moonlight had eroded his sanity. His ego had threatened to shatter in the swirl of the phosphorescent glow. Eugene found it hard to speculate what kind of being a mad Vermouth might be. The Vermouth that he remembered had always been rational, composed, and meticulous. Reincarnation. If it was Vermouth's intention, Eugene could begrudgingly accept it. After all, Vermouth had made numerous arrangements for Eugene's benefit. But what if Vermouth had gone crazy, and this reincarnation was not Vermouth's intention but a sinister plot of the Demon King of Incarceration? Then wouldn't the very reincarnation be a trap? What Eugene had been doing all this while might indeed be a part of the Demon King's scheme. And indeed, the Demon King of Incarceration had facilitated Eugene's path several times so far. No. Eugene eradicated the waver in his heart. Just the mere touch of your hand as the Demon King on my existence revolts me. There was a possibility. Yet Eugene denied that possibility. No matter the truth behind the reincarnation, Eugene's nature remained unchanged. It had been the same 300 years ago and even in the more distant past. He would kill demon folk and he would kill the Demon Kings. This simple, linear desire to kill still constituted Eugene's essence, his origin. Even if all he had been doing was dancing on the palm of the Demon King of Incarceration, what Eugene had to do remained unaltered. The Demon King of Incarceration started speaking in the face of Eugene's blatant loathing. 300 years ago at the pinnacle of Babel I made a promise with Vermouth. I promised to return Sienna, Molen, and Anise. And I promised to return your body and soul. Eugene had suspected that the oath contained such a promise. However, it was his first time having it confirmed by the Demon King of Incarceration. The Demon King of Incarceration watched as Eugene's face hardened and continued to speak. In granting the soul, I fulfilled Vermouth's demand. Melding the soul and memories did not seem to be an easy task even for Vermouth. Eugene just listened as the long-awaited questions were finally answered. Just as I had done with the Demon King of Fury, I tied your soul and memories together. That is the extent of my involvement, stated the Demon King of Incarceration firmly. What did you receive in return from Vermouth? Asked Eugene. He had secured his life from the Demon King of Incarceration, had the body and soul of his deceased companion returned, and even had centuries of peace guaranteed. The world had paid no price for the oath. The eyes of the Demon King of Incarceration curved upwards into a smile. Is the answer to that question important to you? He asked. It is, answered Eugene unhesitatingly. You must have many other things you want to ask about Vermouth now, teased the Demon King of Incarceration. The Demon King of Incarceration raised a finger, flicking it lightly. With just that motion, the chains supporting him rang out in harmony. In front of Eugene stood a man of lean build, draped in dozens if not hundreds of chains. He was a demon king who looked down upon other demon kings with disdain. He was an existence feared by other demon kings. No, he was an existence feared even by the gods. "What should I call you?" he asked, directing his finger towards Eugene. "The ancient god of war, Agaroth? The stupid Hamel? Or should I call you Eugene Lionheart?" "All three are me," responded Eugene. He turned his head with a hollow laugh. The statue of Agaroth was in sight. Then he recalled the statue of Hamel he had seen in the desert underground. Finally, contemplating the past self that existed in the sculpture, Eugene said, "The me right now. Eugene Lionheart." With this declaration, he acknowledged the self that breathed life into this present moment. It was a question that needed no pondering. He had feared not being himself, but now that fear had evaporated. It did not matter whether he was Agaroth, Hamel, or Eugene. The tasks that lay ahead of him would stay the same. As long as the memories remained vivid, Eugene's ego wouldn't change. The memories of Agaroth will not be vivid. The demon king of incarceration withdrew his finger and then explained further. That memory disappeared the moment Agaroth died. What you can recall now is due to Agaroth's relic that was drawn to your soul. And because this city which once worshipped you resonated with your spirit. Inevitably, you became aware of being Agaroth and drew the divine sword embedded in your soul. Eugene raised a hand to his chest. Light's novel. The divine sword he had used against Iris was an actualization of Agaroth's divine attribute and the faith he had gathered. In the Age of Myths, Agaroth crafted the divine power as red as his own blood, into a great sword to slaughter the demon kings. The vague memories will bring you great confusion. "Wouldn't it be better to ask about yourself rather than vermouth?" inquired the demon king of incarceration. "I am me," Eugene replied while gripping his chest. "So what if Agaroth's memories aren't clear? They're memories from a time even before centuries ago. I'm not desperate for them." It wasn't that he didn't want to remember them more clearly. However, to Eugene, understanding the current state of vermouth was more crucial than remembering his past as Agaroth. "I had no expectations from the start. You seem like you won't give an answer now," spat Eugene. He glared at the demon king of incarceration, who met Eugene's eyes without responding. It was an uneasy gaze as Eugene perceived it. "You." Unknowingly, the word escaped Eugene's lips. He stared deep into those crimson eyes, yet Eugene was unable to decipher the emotions buried deep within them. The demon king of incarceration had shown him many rare smiles, but Eugene could not comprehend the meaning behind the smiles either. The demon king of fury had lived since the Age of Myths. Yet after being reborn, he had preserved the memories of his previous life through a deal with the demon king of incarceration, and had climbed up to become the demon king of fury once again 300 years ago. Then what about the other demon kings? Had the demon kings of carnage and cruelty also lived since ancient times? No. Eugene recalled the demon king of incarceration's words, stating that destruction was abrupt and irresistible. If one could survive destruction, there was no need for the demon king of fury to die and reincarnate unnecessarily. Bender. Irresistible, was it? "What are you?" said Eugene. Was it not right before his eyes? The demon king of incarceration was the one who resisted the destruction that had erased the mythical era. A demon king's power ceased when the demon king perished. If the demon king of incarceration died with the destruction, choosing to preserve his memory and opting for reincarnation, this city would not even have remained beneath the sea. Thus, it meant that the demon king of incarceration survived even the destruction that ended the Age of Myths. There was no being who lived as long as the demon king of incarceration in this world, and no one who understood the truth as much as he did. Eugene could not comprehend what exactly the demon king of incarceration was, nor could he understand his actions. Even today's events were no exception. When the Moonlight Sword went berserk, the erosion was forcibly cut off only because the demon king of incarceration intervened. Had the demon king of incarceration not intervened, the Moonlight Sword would have not only extinguished the demon king of fury but swallowed Eugene's ego as well. "What in the world is the demon king of destruction?" Eugene asked. The demon king of destruction had existed even during the Age of Myths. Just like 300 years ago, the demon king of destruction wandered the Devildom alone without forming any allegiance. It was more fitting to be called a phenomenon than a demon king. The demon king's existence was so elusive it was nearly impossible even to observe, let alone track and monitor. The battlefield where Agaroth had perished was located completely on the other side of the Devildom. It was not a region where the demon king of destruction descended. Nevertheless, the demon king of destruction had suddenly appeared, engulfing Ogoroth completely. Was it appropriate to call such a thing a demon king? No, it was simply annihilation itself. The end of an era. When the time came, beasts of destruction appeared from the far reaches of the world. Those beasts killed every living being in the world. If only Molin had not been obstructing them. The Nur that came over from Roguiaran would have begun killing everything living in the world as it had during the mythical era. No, Eugene suddenly remembered. According to Molin, it was only 100 years ago when the Nur began crossing over from Roguiaran. Ignoring his own descending madness, Molin hunted the Nur. Not a single Nur managed to cross Lahanjar. It's not an army, Eugene realized. At most, dozens of Nur came over in a day, a number Molin could handle alone. The situation hardly changed for the 100 years that Molin stopped the invasion of the Nur. Never had there been a time when hundreds or thousands of Nur appeared at once, nor had the Demon King of Destruction shown himself in response to the persistent interference. It's different from the mythical age, Eugene concluded. Back then, the beasts that appeared at the end of the era were truly countless, popping up from unknown places. Even though an innumerable number of them were killed, there was no end to them. Still, they were fought and killed. If the Nur had a miasma that drove people mad, the people on the battlefield had steadfast faith in Ogoroth. Regardless of how many there were, the Nur couldn't get past Ogoroth, who wielded the divine sword at the forefront. If the Demon King of Destruction had not descended there, Ogoroth and his followers would have won the war. Pushing aside the skepticism towards the unidentified monster, they would have waged the war against the Demon King of Incarceration as originally planned. Ascend Babel, the Demon King of Incarceration said with a smile. Clang. The chains forming the chair dispersed, and the Demon King of Incarceration rose from his seat. Eugene Lionheart. I will answer your questions at the summit of Babel, he said. It was as Eugene expected. He furrowed his brows deeply and glared fiercely at the Demon King of Incarceration. He had anticipated that the Demon King wouldn't provide straightforward answers. Yet, leaving without a single answer after hearing all the questions seemed excessively cruel. Why did you save me? Unsure whether he would receive an answer, Eugene nevertheless voiced his question. It would be a hollow end for everyone, wouldn't it? The Demon King of Incarceration uttered as he stepped back. For the Demon King of Fury who succeeded the throne over a distant age, for you who dreamed of the massacre of the Demon Kings time and time again, for Vermouth with whom a pact was forged, and for me waiting for you at the top of Babel. Silence enveloped the space, a pregnant pause hanging heavily between them. It couldn't be helped that you were defeated, died, and failed due to insufficient strength. However, being consumed by the sword of destruction, it wasn't because you were weak. With a resounding clang, chains lifted from behind the Demon King of Incarceration, connecting to form a grand circle in a unified rise. But it seems you don't have enough strength to challenge me either, the Demon King of Incarceration chuckled, stepping into the interior of the circle with a mirthful disposition. Hold on a moment. In haste, Eugene started speaking rapidly, reaching out to hold the Demon King of Incarceration back. Are you Vermouth? The question halted the Demon King's progress, a stillness taking over as he turned to regard Eugene with a face that conveyed disbelief. Are you asking because you sincerely believe that? The Demon King of Incarceration looked at Eugene with an expression of incredulity. Chapter 380, The Abyss 4. Eugene hadn't had many occasions to see the face of the Demon King of Incarceration. During his time as Ogoroth, he hadn't seen him at all. Though as Hamel he had caught a distant glimpse of the Demon King during the battle on the Crimson Plains. When he finally entered Babel, Hamel had died before getting a chance to come face to face with the Demon King. In this life, however, he had been entangled with the Demon King of Incarceration from early on. Their initial encounter had occurred in Hamel's tomb beneath the desert, although at that time the Demon King of Incarceration had manifested within the body of a Death Knight. But from that moment, Eugene found himself directly involved with the Demon King of Incarceration, even meeting him in person during the night march. Yet it was the first time he had seen the Demon King of Incarceration look this flustered. Am I Vermouth? The Demon King repeated. The previously indifferent expressions that often adorned the Demon King's visage, rarely disrupted but by a thin smile, were replaced by a vivid mosaic of reactions, eyebrows drawing uneven arches and lips twitching. I didn't think it was entirely implausible. Eugene murmured, unyielding and contemplative. The question might have been blurted out suddenly, yet it was not without a foundation of suspicion. There were indeed considerable similarities between the Demon King of Incarceration and Vermouth. Both were suspicious, enigmatic, and fundamentally inscrutable in their intents. Are you sincerely asking that? The Demon King managed to query again with a hollow chuckle. It was a response that seemed tinged with even a hint of offense. Why would you think so? Asked the Demon King of Incarceration. Because if you were Vermouth, many of my questions would be answered. Why Vermouth would have agreed to make a pact with you, why you agreed to a seemingly disadvantageous promise, why you spared and returned Sienna, Anise and Molyn 300 years ago. Your involvement in my reincarnation and the time you intervened to save me when I was almost annihilated. The Demon King's face once again donned a mask of impassivity. He tilted his head slightly, fixing a piercing gaze upon Eugene. Indeed, your suspicions are not entirely baseless. So, Eugene Lionheart, what will you do if I tell you that I am Vermouth? The question came with a heavy undertone. It was not an entertaining thought. Yet since it was Eugene who initiated this, he didn't need much time or reflection to respond. I'd first listen to what you have to say, then decide whether or not to kill you. Though being honest, I would likely choose to kill you, answered Eugene directly. You would kill me? The Demon King asked. That's right. Eugene's answer harbored no doubt. Regardless of the circumstances, the Demon King of Incarceration was still a Demon King. He was responsible for initiating the war 300 years ago, a war that ravaged lands and caused innumerable losses. You started the war, Eugene said, his voice cold. It was an incontrovertible truth. The Demon King of Incarceration had been the first among the 5 Demon Kings to invade the continent, unleashing a horde of demonic beasts that obliterated neighboring small nations bordering the Devildom. That marked the inception of a domino effect, ushering in the brutal invasion of the other Demon Kings, the Demon King of Carnage, Cruelty and Fury, upon the continent. Although the Demon King of Incarceration became less engrossed in the invasion afterward, the fact that he set the catastrophic events in motion remained unaltered. It was also the reason why all the dragons united and launched an offensive against him. But then, the dragons were slaughtered when the Demon King of Destruction made an appearance, Eugene thought. What was it like during the Age of the Myths? Did the Demon King of Incarceration start it all then too? He could not remember. But he wasn't particularly curious either. It was a past life too far away, belonging to a completely different era. I see. After a moment of silence, the Demon King of Incarceration nodded slowly. I did not think there was a reason to answer, but still I will give you an answer. I am not Vermouth. Hearing those words, Eugene felt relieved. Eugene Lionheart. You do not need to hesitate at all to kill me, the Demon King of Incarceration declared. If so, I am glad, Eugene replied without smiling. Bender, the Demon King of Incarceration, gazed at Eugene's face for a while before turning away. This time, Eugene didn't hold back the Demon King of Incarceration when he started walking into the circle formed by chains. He refused to kill Sienna and Anise and formed a pact with Vermouth. He knew me in my past life, aided in my reincarnation, and watched over me in this life. Eugene's thoughts were complex. He had made a pact with Vermouth. It wasn't necessarily because of that. In the end, Eugene, Sienna, Anise and Molyn were enemies of the Demon King of Incarceration. Had they been spared because they were too insignificant? It might have been the case. Indeed, the power of the Demon King of Incarceration was overwhelmingly massive. He was allowed to think that way. But it seemed like there was a different reason for the Demon King of Incarceration to go to these lengths. If you were there with us, there would have been no need to fight the Demon King of Incarceration upon reaching the pinnacle of the Demon King's castle. The highest priority for me was that. Reaching the pinnacle of the Demon King of Incarceration's castle, climbing to the top of Babel. If I could meet the true form of the Demon King of Incarceration there, it would have been accomplished. If I had defeated him, the terms of the promise would have significantly changed. Just like I did, stand in the palace of the Demon King of Incarceration and arrange to meet his true form. The Demon King of Incarceration won't let you climb Babel easily. He is such an existence. What happens afterward, you'll have to experience it yourself. Eugene recalled Vermouth's words. He had already met the true form of the Demon King of Incarceration. But this place wasn't the peak of Babel. To know the truth, as the demon king of incarceration had said, one had to climb Babel. There was no need to fight, Eugene recalled. But that was a story from 300 years ago. Whether it would be the same even if he climbed Babel now, he didn't know. And even if the demon king of incarceration had no intention of fighting, Eugene was determined to fight and kill the demon king of incarceration. The only reason I had to have you reincarnated was that of all the people I know, you were the most like the hero. Vermouth had spoken these words in the dark room. Now those words invoked various thoughts. Did you know too? Muttering to himself, Eugene turned his head to see the mountain built from the corpses of monsters. Sitting atop it was a statue of Ogoroth. Eugene stared intensely at a distant past version of himself. Even though he knew that showing them everything in the abyss would be quicker than telling them, going down into the abyss again with Sienna and Christina was not an option. It was because, except for Iris, who had the qualifications because of a promise, and Eugene, who was fatefully connected to the ruins, no one could pass through the gate of the abyss. So, the sea that was split with the divine sword had come back together once again. Eugene stared silently at the quiet sea, anticipating what Sienna, who had heard the whole story, would say. You are claiming to be a god? Sienna asked incredulously. Eugene just stayed silent at this question. A god of war? Sienna's eyebrows furrowed. Have you lost your mind? She questioned. Eugene still didn't offer a response. No, really, Eugene. It's not that I don't believe you, but it's just too absurd. You a god of war? Sienna questioned once more. Teeth. Eugene had somewhat anticipated her reaction. He too would have doubted Sienna's sanity as well if she abruptly claimed, I am actually a god of magic. I see, said Christina. Contrary to Sienna, who was skeptical, Christina nodded slowly with her hands gathered. She spoke with a gaze filled with genuine admiration and worship towards Eugene. Indeed, Sir Eugene, you were a possessor of an extraordinary destiny, Christina commented. Do you believe me? Asked Eugene. Absolutely. Not only me, but Lady Anise also believes that in your previous life, you were an ancient god of war, Christina said while staring fixedly at Eugene. In fact, we witnessed your miracle today, she continued. Miracle? Sienna murmured, shifting her perception of him being an ignorant and barbaric Hamel. She recalled Eugene when he had cornered Iris earlier. Indeed, Sienna muttered. A miracle. Most wizards did not blindly believe in such uncertainties. However, it seemed ludicrous to doubt and deny it after witnessing it firsthand. The quality of his mana had changed in an instant. His flames burned pitch black, contrary to the name of the white flame formula. The moonlight sword had rampaged. And finally, the red light that split Iris and the sea into two. That wasn't mana. It wasn't magic, nor was it the light of the moonlight sword, commented Sienna. It was undoubtedly an alien power. Sienna felt the nature of the power that light held. Christina and Anise felt the same, especially Anise, who had some idea of the identity of that power since the first time Eugene's flame changed. Divine power, said Anise. The belief in a deity, the manifestation of divine magic and even miracles beyond it, all occurred through faith. That was precisely divine power. How the divine power manifested varied according to the deity who was worshipped. For the priests who worshipped the god of light, it appeared as a dazzling light. That light was bestowed by a deity. One could also say it was borrowed from the deity. Hamel, the light within you wasn't granted by the god of light. It was a light sparked from within yourself, a divine power intrinsic to the deity themselves, Anise declared. Light's novel. Anise was no longer a human being. The human version of Anise had died 300 years ago. Anise of now was an ethereal entity, a celestial, closer to a deity than any human could ever be. Because of this, Anise had sensed the divine power ever since Eugene's flame had transformed. Especially Hamel, the last one you drew, the sword of light, that bore the force deserving to be called a divine sword in the truest sense, Anise explained. The holy sword Altair, said to be crafted by the god of light, was wrought from the flesh and blood of the avatar the deity had assumed when descending to the earthly realm. Even after the god of light ascended back to the heavens, Altair remained in this world, regarded by the Church of Light as the first offspring of the deity, a torch left for the world, infused with a potent light. Yet the holy sword was different from a divine sword. It merely borrowed its sanctity from a deity, while a divine sword was forged purely of divine power. Eugene wore a complicated expression while touching his chest, where he had drawn the divine sword. "It cannot be drawn frequently," he commented. "Indeed." Anise nodded, a given in her expression. "Hamel, you being Ogoroth yourself would know best, but the name Ogoroth dates back thousands of years, or perhaps even longer. According to your words, didn't all the devotees worshipping Ogoroth perish along with the end of the age of myths? While there might be few who know the name Ogoroth in this era, none would worship Ogoroth as a god." "I suppose so," said Eugene. "A god not worshipped by anyone, a deity of war vanished with antiquity. Hamel, even if you are the reincarnation of that war god, there would be hardly any divine might or divinity left in you. Yet according to your own realization, you've awakened the divine power," explained Anise. He could wield it only once. That was Eugene's current assessment. While dissecting it finally could allow for several more uses, utilizing the holy sword with the empty sword would be more convenient and better. But even if wielded just once, the divine sword swung with all his might had annihilated the Demon King's dark power and split the sea. "I cannot be certain, but being able to draw the divine sword seems to be limited to once a day. Though he couldn't do it at the moment," Eugene murmured, caressing his chest. "It feels like it's gradually replenishing." "The name, the god of war Ogoroth, isn't what's important," said Anise while stepping closer to Eugene. "Only the name has changed. The soul remains the same. Today, Hamel, you killed the Demon King of Fury. Right now, only the punitive force is aware, but once we return to Shimuin, the entire continent will know." Eugene understood Anise's words. Divinity grew with faith. The brilliance of the light bestowed by the God of Light was due to the grandeur of the Church of Light among the religions of the continent. He had killed the Demon King, an astonishing feat that would shake the entire continent. Once this fact was known, many across the continent would chant Eugene's name, perhaps even to the point of worship. For Eugene, who already possessed the divine sword, such worship would accumulate and convert into divine power. "I see," Eugene thought in realization. Eugene didn't particularly desire it, but the more the continent hailed him as a hero, the stronger his divine power would become. He would be able to swing the divine sword more than once as his power increased, and its inherent potency would also grow. If he managed to garner such surplus in divinity, he would be able to explore other ways to utilize this power as well, beyond just wielding the divine sword. "God, a god." Sienna cast a complex gaze, stealing glances at Eugene as she murmured, the perplexity evident on her face. "Not a goddamned idiot, but a god? A god not of idiocy or insanity, but a god of war?" It was a huge insult, yet Eugene didn't take it as such. The playful linguistic game embedded in that derogatory phrase brought a subtle smile to his lips. Anise mumbled while eyeing Sienna skeptically, "Was that a joke just now?" No, it wasn't," retorted Sienna. "It sounded like a joke," mumbled Anise. "It wasn't, I told you," shouted Sienna. Holding back a smile had been the right call. Eugene managed his expression with a fierce determination before turning his head away. At the moment, the ship carrying Eugene and his party was progressing slowly across the sea. The Demon King was dead, and so were the Dark Elves and pirates. However, something might have remained at their base. One of the objectives of this suppression mission was to rescue the dwarf craftsmen who had been kidnapped by the pirates. There were no dwarves among the monsters, Eugene remembered. Of course, it was possible that, having transformed into monsters, they lost their dwarf characteristics. But that didn't mean the expedition could return to Shimuin without checking. "How is Seal?" Eugene sighed deeply before asking. "Her physical condition is fine. There is no anomaly appearing in her left eye," answered Anise. "I checked with magic as well. It's the same. That eye has certainly become a demon eye, but it is still functioning properly as an eye," added Sienna. Sienna and Anise both gave a sigh. "Her energy hasn't significantly diminished either. But just in case, we forced her to sleep," said Anise. "Carmen and Desra are watching over her now. For now, let her rest deeply and we can check the demon eye later," suggested Sienna. "Yeah," Eugene murmured with a bitter smile. Anise looked at him with worried eyes and said, "Hamel, you shouldn't feel guilty." "I should." Eugene shook his head as he responded, It happened while she was trying to save me. Anise and Sienna did not say anything in response. It was different from what I did 300 years ago when I rushed in without needing to, Eugene said bitterly. If Seal hadn't pushed him away, if she hadn't thrust herself forward in his stead, the demon eye of darkness would have pierced through Eugene's head without a doubt.